Hey everyone, it's Noah Pfister. Normally, I would do a movie report on something like this, but I unfortunately will not have a lot of time in the next couple of days to actually do so. And I actually really want to get this review out as soon as possible because today we are talking about Dan Trachtenberg's newest Predator movie, Predator Badlands. And I'd also like to thank IMAX for doing a fan event and allow me to see it on Wednesday. So, about 24 hours early. Now, before we get more into this, a little bit of context. So, Predator Badlands does have a little bit of controversy behind it, mainly because it is the first Predator movie since AVP to actually be rated PG-13. Now, the producers of this movie and the director, Dan Trachtenberg, have said that they really wanted to try and make it feel as much R as possible without compromising the PG-13 rating. And it's clear once you see the movie that the reason for the PG-13 rating was to get more money to, allow the VFX and, Dan to tell the story that they wanted to do with this grander scope of a Predator movie. And do you feel that PG-13 rating? A bit. I'm not going to lie. You do feel the PG-13 rating a bit. And unfortunately, you do also kind of feel the Disneyfication of the Predator franchise. And it's not that it's grotesquely apparent. There are a lot of jokes in this movie and a lot of wholesomeness that you wouldn't normally find in a Predator movie. And this will turn off longtime Predator fans in certain ways. But overall, how do I feel about this movie? I loved it. It's a little weird to say because this is so drastically different from Prey and Predator Killer of Killers. And I have to commend Dan Trachtenberg for one, revitalizing the Predator franchise, and two, not falling into the trappings of just doing the same thing over and over and over again. With every new Predator project that he's done, he's tried to tackle it in a different way. With the first one being sort of a, back to your roots, by the numbers Predator movie in a time period. And that worked really well. Predator Killer Killers was in an animated form and decided to try and tackle Predator lore in a slightly more unique way through an anthology. And that worked pretty well too, even if there were 4 acts and it doesn't actually conclude the movie, which we'll get into mildly. But Predator Badlands is definitely the biggest swing that he has taken with this franchise so far, because this is very much reminiscent of two certain things. This is very reminiscent of pulp sci-fi of the late 60s to early to mid 70s, as well as the Dark Horse comics that, were released for the Predator series in the early to mid 90s. Now, what is Predator Badlands about? Well, it's about a runt predator named Deck, who, and by the way, this isn't a spoiler, this is within the first, 10 minutes of the movie. Deck is trained by his brother Quay, who wants his brother to be strong. And unfortunately, as it turns out, Deck is a runt and is a dishonor to his family's clan. And his father instructs Quay to kill him. And, well, that doesn't happen. Other things happen, and this sets Deck off on an adventure to try and claim his honor and prove his worth to his clan. Now, I'm going to get this right out of the gate. Yes, Weyland-Yutani from the Alien franchise makes a massive appearance here. And yes, it's fucking cool. It's really cool. Seeing these two worlds kind of cross over together, especially in the way that it's done here, which isn't ham-fisted. It's actually a very natural integration that you would feel in ways that I think other franchises fail. In stuff like Marvel and DC, where it sometimes feels like they're forcing these connections to happen, Weyland-Yutani showing up in a story like this actually feels legitimately real. And I commend the writers, which is also Dan Tracht. Side note, Dan Trachtenberg has like 4 credits in this movie. He's the writer, he is the director, he is also one of the producers, and on top of that, he's also one of the editors. So it's just a whole slew of roles for this guy. He's essentially become the Ridley Scott of the Predator franchise, a main driving force. And what I respect is that he is clearly a fan first and foremost. He's a fan. And fans making fan-related stuff works tremendously in the long run. And I think he's been on a massive hot streak since Prey, regardless of how you feel about certain things. But moving back, no, just because Weyland-Yutani is in this movie doesn't mean there's a xenomorph. I want you to temper those expectations now. There is no xenomorph, all right? There's a couple Easter eggs to other things in other Predator lore, but nothing to do with xenomorphs. So just put that at the door. And I want to talk about the lead actor who plays Deck, whose name I just simply cannot pronounce because I can't. I can't. But I will say this. He does a phenomenal job conveying Deck's frustration, his rage, and his driving force to become a hunter. He's phenomenal. And Elle Fanning does a great job playing both Thea and Tessa. She, another actor doing dual roles. Who would have thunk? But Elle Fanning does a phenomenal job. But I will say this a little bit. I mentioned before that this movie does suffer a little bit from being a little too PG-13. And don't get me wrong, there is some hardcore action, and it works really well for most of the time. There's a lot of blood, there's a lot of brutal kills, but there are no humans in this movie. All the blood is either yellow, white, or green. And there are certain points where they PG-13 themselves away from the more grotesque situations. And as a longtime Predator fan, I'm a little disappointed in that aspect. It's not a massive detriment that I couldn't enjoy the overall film, but I did find myself going, if only they could just go a little further, But anyway, I digress. So let's try and pull this train back on track. So the story itself is legitimately good. But I did mention before that this may feel a little mixed to some Predator fans. And there's good reason for that. They delve deep, or rather deeper, into Predator lore. And on top of that, they do take the Predator, the Yaksha, in directions that we haven't seen before. And I feel like that's a necessity for a franchise like this. Because we have essentially seen, the Predator do so many things as a side character, but we never had a full focus on their culture or who they are as a species, as characters. And that's been a real downside because, for the most part, every movie has been by the numbers. They're the antagonists, and, we have a human character who we either give a shit about or we don't. People die, Predator loses, humans win, oy vey. But here it's different. Here we have a Predator at the forefront of the movie, in the forefront of the story, actually being a protagonist. And to put this kind of creature in this role, you're going to have to humanize them or at least delve into their story a little bit. So some choices are made that I understand why some Predator fans may not like it. And with the PG-13 rating, it's understandable why this movie may leave a slight bad taste in some people's mouths. One of my friends I went with didn't necessarily like the movie as much as he wanted to. He was definitely disappointed at the lack of edge that this certain predator deck didn't show. And I understand, I really do. But this is a huge swing from a director and from a creator who cares deeply for this franchise. So I'm willing to take a step back and see what they go with. And despite the fact that this is PG-13, the violence is still rather intense. It's actually creative at times. And due to that PG-13 rating, they're actually given a higher budget. And with that higher budget, we actually see a lot of really cool shit. You know, we actually see predators hunting alien creatures. It's not just simply humans anymore. And that is a novelty that, as a longtime Predator fan, I actually have been wanting to see. And sure, there's other things in this movie that we don't normally get to see in a Predator movie. We get to see them interacting. We get to hear the language of the yacha. A lot of this movie, including the main character, is subtitled. And I love that. I love movies where, you're allowed to subtitle things that aren't even in English or a human language. One of my greatest appreciations for the Planet of the Apes movies was the fact that large chunks of those movies were subtitled and spoken with ape sign language. It's a level of immersion that I, as a sci-fi and fantasy fan, have nothing but love for. And Dex speaks complete yacha throughout the whole movie. And his interactions with Thea, while aggravating at first, slowly become more and more homey and wholesome in a way that, I'm a softie at heart, and I loved their relationship. And even how the movie ends too. Let's talk about that a little bit, because the movie almost has a very closed story, but it has a mid-credit scene, kind of. It takes place immediately after the title card, and we actually get somewhat of a payoff to Killer of Killers because it hints at a connection between certain characters. And if this movie does well, we'll actually get to see that payoff. Plus, if you're a Predator fan who has read the comics, who's read the novels, you know exactly where this is going, because there's a certain lore aspect to these movies that we actually haven't seen yet. And for those of you who are a fan of this franchise and who know that level of lore, I'm excited. I am deeply excited as a Predator fan. Now, there's a lot more that I do want to say. A lot of spoilers that I want to get into. How this, my butt's a bit numb from sitting in the car. I had to drive 20 minutes to the IMAX theater. But there's so much more that I want to say. A lot of spoilers I want to get into. But I know for a fact that I still need to wrap this thing up, because the last thing I want to do is take up more of your time when you could be using your time right now to go see this movie. So let me just get right into the final verdict of this movie. I still think Predator Killer Killers is definitely the weakest out of the three so far. And as much as I really want to put this movie above Prey, I just don't think I can, because as a Predator fan, that R rating is important to me. That level of grotesque violence. And unfortunately, this movie just didn't quite satisfy that level of violence that I wanted. It satisfied everything else. It had amazing story beats. It had impeccable character interactions, good themes, overall phenomenal pacing. It's well shot. The action is really, really good. They could have easily done the shaky cam, which they didn't. And it even leaves the door open for an expanded look at this Predator universe that I actually want to see more of. But I will admit, I think they need to bring the R rating back. This movie desperately needed it. Well, let me rephrase. It didn't desperately need it, but I think this movie needs an R rating. It just needs it. And overall, I'd still say Prey's the best, because it's definitely the most complete package that I personally could have wanted as a Predator fan. But if we are to get more of Deck and Thea, I would not be against it. I actually really love these characters. I think their stories are beautifully told. And where they're going to go next, I, as a Predator fan, would love to see it. As well as maybe, an AVP movie, but that's going to be like 6 or 7 years down the line. So, overall, I'd give this movie an 8 out of 10. Don't get me wrong. It's not perfect in the slightest. And there's a solid like 15 minutes in the midsection where you can clearly tell Disney had their foot on Dan's neck saying, you are going to add this and you are going to love it. There's a lot of merchandising that they do with levels of animals that becomes very apparent. And there's just a couple slog moments with the comedy, and you just go, please, this movie doesn't need this. But overall, I had a blast in the theater, and I want more. And I encourage you to go see it on an IMAX screen, or just see it in general. I think this movie deserves your money because Lord knows I'm going to be seeing it again soon. I think everyone should. Anywho, I will get back to the movie report as soon as I can, but when it comes to this movie in particular, I could not wait. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let me know what you think of this movie in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.